The third crop is a photo history with my narrative of life in the Slocan Valley from the 1800s to the 1940s. And it's a personal look. I've lived in the Slocan Valley for almost 40 years, and the publisher Sononese Press in Winlaw wanted an insider's look at the Slocan Valley history. I know a lot of people there from over the years. I was a reporter and newspaper and radio journalist, so I know a lot of the families. So when I put out the call for photographs and stories, the word passed around, and I had the privilege of going in and looking through people's old shoe boxes and sitting at their kitchen tables and finding treasures that just aren't seen before. So when word of this book spread, people called me and they referred me to other people. Ray Koziansik's a farmer in the valley, and he talked to me about farming, and he used the words, the third crop. That phrase struck me, and it just kept floating back up through all the piles of paper and research notes, because it's really a lovely image. And no, I never, ever thought of the third crop as being marijuana. The third crop is that rare third cutting of hay that takes your farm animals through the long, hard winter. It's an image of hard work, abundance, a bit of luck, maturity, and celebration. The third crop became the image that inspired me to keep going with this book, even through family deaths and family surgeries and a move from my home of 34 years. You just keep trying, and you just keep celebrating. You keep building your community. That's what clicked for me, and that's what became the force behind the book, how we build communities, from the roads and the hospitals to the cemeteries and the farms, how we log and cook and survive the hardships, how we help each other out, as the Doukhobor people did for the Japanese Canadians who were interned in our valley. Some images just wouldn't let go. The abundance of the land and the rivers, the strings of fish, the Doukhobor women picking strawberries, the Doukhobor men making bricks from the clay of the riverbank. The blasting of the roads and the construction of the dams, the Slocan train station when the internees arrived, the Japanese Canadians who were ripped from their homes on the west coast and brought to our isolated valley. Or the Doukhobor man delivering those people their first produce that first terrible year when they couldn't grow their own crops. Friends said, let the pictures do the talking. Let us see the people's faces and hands, the work they do. So as a writer, I had a lot of research to do, not that many words to write, but let the pictures talk and make my own words some kind of narrative drive to link our lives today with the lives of those pictures. And for me, that was how to tie how we build a community now with how our ancestors built it. And the more I worked, the more I realized that there is an ancestry of place, that it isn't about who came first or who came second, but what we contribute in our time, how we work together. That our story is the story of all of us, from the Sinixt and the Tanaha, to the Scandinavians and the Doukhobors and the Europeans, to the interned Japanese Canadians. I'm glad to say that there's some maps in this book that help bring our culture together. On page 22, I think we have the first map. Of course, you can't see it from here, it's too small, but it's the first map that puts all the communities together, regardless of when they existed. There are Sinixt villages thousands of years old. There are Doukhobor villages 100 years old. Now, these villages are gone now, but we live on this land together. And there are the names of places we know by their current names, Slocan Park or what have you, and there are the internment camps, all on one map. And I don't think that's ever happened before. So you can see in your neighborhood who lived there, what land you're living on, what its history is. And then on page 122, there is this incredible map of the internment camp at Lemon Creek. We found this map up at Lemon Creek Lodge. And this is what the Japanese Canadian internees recreated, because there is nothing there now. There is nothing. It's a field. And they recreated this to put their family names on it so they would have some sense of the village that they lived in. It was a long slog writing The Third Crop. It took me almost 5 years, really. from start to publication, which is a long time, given there's 180 photos in the book. Partly the final push for me was embarrassment and humiliation, the possibility that all these good people had invited me into their home, shared their family photographs, all the museum people and the archivists, that I didn't have the oomph. And partly was I had all these great photos and all these great stories, but I didn't really have a narrative push. And so when I finally knew was like, what really makes me want to do these stories, because they've been done before in other formats and other books, was well, really the people who helped me out, and also finding the narrative link, and that was how are communities built. That's what drives me. I'm a very community-based person. I'm involved in a lot of community organizations. So it was like, okay, how is our community built from the 1800s and earlier through to the 1940s, the period I was covering. And I didn't want to go like, then there were the natives, and then there were the Doukhobors, and then there were the Anglos, and then then there were the Japanese Canadian internees. I want to go like, what did each group contribute in its time to make us the community we are now? It's the ancestry of community is what it is. So it's like, one, some group of people might have built the dams, and others, they built the housing, and others built the roads, and how we have, and some of the stuff is disintegrated, but groups of people keep coming and they keep contributing to who we are in the Slocan Valley. That pushed me, plus humiliation that, I would see people in the co-op at first, oh, you're writing a book, oh, that's great. And then, how's the book going? And then they didn't ask about the book anymore, because it was so slow. And finally, I asked the publisher to have someone come and help me kick my ass around, and they brought in Catherine Gordon, who'd written a previous book about the Slocan Valley. And it just helped me really focus and coordinate it and get that drive, the drive that made the narrative happen, which were my words about why I cared. I get thanks for this book from gratifying places. At a community breakfast, a young mother tells me that she and her 7-year-old daughter look at the pictures and that this will become their reference book for school history projects. Her daughter likes the pictures of the strawberries in the big wooden buckets. A Doukhobor couple sitting next to me on a bench at the river yesterday say they like the part about the Doukhobors and the Japanese Canadian internees, the relationship they had. At a grocery store, someone thanks me for the inclusion of the Sinixt history. This book was a big journey for me. I'm not a researcher, I'm not an academic, and I'm certainly not a computer person. You can see by these artifacts of my own that I'm better with construction paper, like a kid with a big crayon, than I am with all the technology necessary, the JPEGs and the TIFFs and all that kind of stuff. I had to learn that, and it strained me. I got it wrong repeatedly. And thank God people were so patient and generous, and more often than not, the fourth trip back to their home to borrow the photos revealed one more layer of depth, one more photo they were ready to show me, one more story to tell. I'm just going to read you this one passage from the book. Culture welcomes you into a community and makes you a part of it. It can be a culture of food, bake sales, and community fairs that feature the local harvest. In our time and our place, it can be the local pig roast hosted by the Lions Club, the 100-mile potluck at the Valakan Hole, the borscht sales at Appledale Hall, or the Garlic Festival in Hills. It can be a culture made of many community halls in which each ethnic group or geographical community has built a hall to use for its celebrations. Birthdays, weddings, funerals, craft fairs. It can consist of music festivals, lager sports competitions, art shows, quilting bees, displays of woodwork, meetings of political or cultural or seniors groups, service clubs, book clubs and libraries, burial societies, and volunteer groups that saves the river. That's really how the book goes. That's how life goes, full of laughter and love and wonderful people who keep you going even when times are tough. That's our complicated and generous valley. The story here is the story of the Slocan Valley, but it's the story every community tells for itself when they dig into those wonderful shoeboxes and photo albums. Thank you.